extremely demanding for the crews that are working on the roof and on the aerials, to say the least.
A slow, stubborn blaze, crews working around the clock, enduring the bone-chilling cold and the heat from the fire. A community hub decimated in Scarborough tonight. We first showed you the fire at the Agincourt Rec Center that started yesterday evening. Now, the fight to bring it under control lasted all night long and stretched right into today. Chris Glover is there for us tonight. And Chris, the damage is staggering, and what a long, cold, and difficult battle for those firefighters there.
Absolutely, and it's still an active scene even right now. We've been seeing flames shooting out of the roof throughout the day. There's some flames right now that we're hoping you can see. They're difficult to spot, and that is what fire officials have been trying to get to all day long. They have heavy machinery that's en route to this facility to try to get up to the roof and peel it back piece by piece to get access to this very stubborn blaze. Despite all this icy wetness, a devious fire burns within the roof of the Agincourt Rec Center.
I feel like sad, yeah, because it's important for the community. There's not much around this area, you know.
I just want to show you, give you an indication as to what we're dealing with.
The fire chief showed off a piece of the roof to give people a sense of the unique all-night firefight.
We're literally chasing fire across this roof and we just can't get at it.
Icy conditions didn't help. Crews were forced to thaw out equipment, let alone themselves, on TTC shelter buses. The fire started around 4:30 yesterday afternoon and reached 5-alarm status at its peak.
That's very busy time.
Yeah.
At that time, so there'd been a lot of people in there, so it's good no one was injured too.
For 6 decades, Muriel Hughes has swam here. The fire didn't spread to the ice rinks, but the poolside suffered serious damage.
I've gone to this community center all my life, and it's a very busy community center. It's a great loss to the community, basically.
Absolutely.
So it's one thing to see it on TV, but it's very sad, you know.
The people who were using the center at the time, including people who were in the pool in their bathing suits, got out safely.
The mayor anticipates the city will pay the $5 million deductible to fix the center, and then insurance will cover the rest. The city now has a team dedicated to relocating the roughly 3,000 registrations for its winter programming.
We're looking at space in some of our other facilities, some of our shared facilities, to see if there's a possibility to actually move some of those programs.
But they're full too, probably.
Some maybe. We're looking to wherever.
The blaze reportedly started in the building's mechanical room, but Toronto Fire says it's still investigating the origin and the cause. And even today, the fire persisted. So for the first time ever, police drones flew overhead hunting for stubborn hotspots.
The fact that we have heat signatures now from the thermal imaging cameras on the drones lets us make good sound tactical decisions.
But for people who love this place, it's all too late.
Probably Centennial. I mean, that's not a big deal, but, you know, the loss of the community center is. I mean, it is the hub of the community. So it's really too bad. So I hope they find out what caused it, too.
I have you again. I have you. So right now what you're seeing is the hoses there. They're actually spraying onto the parking lot, which is probably a little bit odd to see. And the reason is even more odd. It's because they've been putting so much water on this building throughout the last 24 hours that they've flooded the basement. Yet another problem that this facility is going to have to deal with. But right now, as I mentioned, they're waiting for that heavy machinery to get started on ripping up the roof. And once they've been able to put out all of these flames, then the heavy lifting continues as they try to investigate how all of this started.
Yeah, it'll be days they'll be there for. Thank you for that, Chris. Now, this biting cold is causing a stream of issues. The latest, falling ice near Adelaide and Spadina. Icicles dropping from this building blasted right through the roof of a Canada Post truck. You can see it there. No one was injured, but police say at least a couple of other vehicles were also hit. And Colette, we talk about the warm-up after this deep freeze we have, and this is another one of the issues that comes with it.
Yes, we have a few issues that can be very dangerous, and this is certainly one of them. I actually know of someone who had a head injury recently because of an icicle that fell off of a construction site just walking downtown, coming from a hockey game. I saw some drop the other day just as I was putting gas into my car. So this is the kind of thing that happens. And not only that, ice is a problem when it starts to break off when we see these mild temperatures, and it starts to get into our sewer drains and it backs things up. Also, the tributaries, our waterways, we can see ice breaking off and jamming things up, and then that leads to flooding. So all kinds of concerns we have. On the more positive side, of course, is how it's going to be feeling better for us. These are the unofficial highs from today for Windsor -11, for Toronto -10 degrees. And then look at the forecast highs I have for tomorrow. -2 for the city. Coming up close to the freezing mark. Southwestern Ontario will go above. As we go into Sunday, look at these mild readings. Such a departure from where we have been, and it continues to be warm into Monday. After that, temperatures will start to moderate a little bit and begin to come back down. But with all the snowfall that we've had, you can imagine the kinds of problems we may be seeing, and we'll be watching carefully. Current temperatures, we're not into the mild air yet. -13 for the moment in Toronto, feeling like -20. Keeping in mind we still have the extreme cold alert for the city and the warning back to the west of the city, because there it may feel like -30 to -35 overnight tonight. For us, we go down to -16. A few flurries are possible. Feels like -25. Tomorrow afternoon, with that -2 and the cloud cover that will be moving in, there's also the risk of some mixed precipitation. I'll talk more about that a little later in the show, Dwight.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
You surprised to pull in and see that there's no gas?
Yeah, big surprise for me.
You almost have to go and find a gas station that actually has gas.
Can you point me in the right direction?
If you and your local gas station are running on empty, blame the cold. Coming up, why this week's winter wallop is leading to a lot of dry tanks around the city. Police are asking for help identifying this man who tried to blow up a law office in Vaughan. You can see video footage showing the man grabbing 4 jerry cans. He breaks the office's front door and tosses them in, then flings an object in and rushes back as the area lights up. Can see it there, 1 more can to go. Now, police say it happened on January 7th around 2 in the morning in the area of Rutherford Road and Highway 400. The suspect used a stolen license plate, officers say. Anyone with information is asked to contact York Regional Police. Speed may have been a factor in a deadly overnight crash. 1 man is dead and 2 badly injured after this BMW smashed into a minivan on Meadowvale Road near the 401. The car's engine completely ripped out. The minivan smashed to pieces and flipped on its side. The driver of the van was pronounced dead at the scene. The driver of the car and a passenger in one of the vehicles were rushed to hospital. It happened around 3 this morning. Police say either one or both of the cars may have been speeding once they look at the extent of the damage. After a few days of confusion over the future of full-day kindergarten in Ontario, the PCs are trying to set the record straight. In a statement this afternoon, Education Minister Lisa Thompson said, quote, "There has been speculation around the issue of full-day kindergarten. Let me be clear, we are absolutely committed to full-day learning for 4- and 5-year-olds across the province."
Nobody there to help her. She died alone, struggling.
Coming up, not enough staff with life and death consequences. An inside look at the struggles at long-term care homes in Ontario. More on this Marketplace undercover investigation in just a few minutes.
She's been waiting to use the washroom for like an hour.
I don't have 5 minutes. I don't have 2 minutes.
Yeah.
1.
9 times out of 10, you're skipping steps. That day, you don't wash under their armpits and you don't wash their nether regions.
The Ontario PCs are facing questions from the opposition about potential privatization and overreach in the province's healthcare system. This after a draft bill was leaked hinting at the government's plans.
The government's draft legislation, which has been authenticated by the minister, gives draconian powers to the minister and the board of 15 people. One example, they can force decisions on local healthcare providers with deadlines of 30 days, with no consultation and no right to appeal.
The document proposes one centralized agency to replace the 14 LHINs across the province. The NDP says it also opens the door to privatization. Andrew Horvath spoke about it on Metro Morning today.
Part of the legislation allows then the LHIN or this super agency to contract out a whole list of public health services, and nowhere in that piece of the legislation does it say that those entities that are contracted have to be not-for-profit or public.
Mike Crawley sat down with the health minister today. He asked her about that draft bill and the possibility of opening up the healthcare system to privatization.
What we're looking at is making sure that we strengthen our publicly funded healthcare system so that people will pay for their services with their OHIP card, and that you won't be able to skip the line by going elsewhere for services. We want to make sure that everyone in Ontario receives excellent quality, publicly funded healthcare services.
I know this was only draft legislation, but it obviously means the government is at least considering the idea of a super agency to oversee the whole health system. How does creating this one big super agency to be the big bureaucracy managing the healthcare system, how's that going to make care any better for patients?
Well, it's not finalized. Drafts are drafts, and that's what appeared yesterday. We're still consulting with people. We want to make sure that we get this right. We're still going to listen to regional voices, and we want to make sure that at the bottom line, there's more frontline care services for people. That's what's most important, is to make sure that people get the care they need, because right now we know that there are over 32,000 people in Ontario who are waiting to get into a long-term care home. We've got 1,200 people every day in Ontario in hospitals across the province receiving health care in hallways and storage rooms and so on. And we have thousands of people waiting for mental health and addiction care, sometimes being told they have to wait up to a year for services. And to a parent that has a child who's expressed suicidal thoughts, that's not acceptable. We need to change that. That's what the people of Ontario expect and deserve.
Okay, so to be able to do that, you have to find some savings somewhere, given the fiscal situation. So, do you have a sense that creating the super agency and eliminating some of the layers of bureaucracy between the government and the frontline providers, is there a target of how much money that could save, and that money would be put into the health system?
We are looking at the way we do everything within the Ministry of Health, and that there are ways that we can modernize our system and still achieve those efficiencies while still putting more money into frontline care. That's our goal. That's what people have told us they expect us to do, and that's what we're working very hard to achieve.
In Dr. Devlin's report, one of the things he said is that simply adding beds to the system is not going to solve the problem of hallway medicine. Do you agree with that?
I do, yes. We need some more beds. We need more beds in the system, but we also need more community supports. If you take a look at mental health and addictions, for example, there are a number of people with chronic mental health problems that don't have anywhere to go except to the emergency department when they're in crisis. We don't want that to happen. We want to make sure that people can be proactive about their own mental health challenges and be able to receive supports in the community. So that's one example that would help alleviate the hallway health care, but also make sure that people get the care that they need. That's the bottom line, is making sure that people get the help and the services they need. That's what we're aiming to do with the work that we're doing.
The last question I have is coming back to that draft legislation. Again, I realize it's only a draft, but one of the powers that it would give you as minister is the ability to force the merger or the closure of what are called health service providers, which could be a hospital, could be long-term care facilities, to force those mergers or closures in 30 days with no consultation. Why would you need that power?
Well, I can't really comment on anything that was specifically in a draft, because a draft is a draft, and things are still under discussion and consultations are still happening. But ultimately, the responsibility for making sure that there's quality healthcare services delivered across the province is mine as the minister. And we are committed to making sure that we have a high functioning quality public healthcare system, and that is something that I'm committed to making sure happens.
Thanks for your time, Minister.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Mike.
Staff at long-term care homes are worried that there aren't enough workers and that elderly patients could be suffering because of it. The team at CBC Marketplace went undercover at a facility in Markham as part of their investigation into long-term care. David Common joins us now with more on this. And David, let's start with what prompted this latest investigation.
Well, Dwight, we've been looking at long-term care for 2 years now, but it all began because of concerns we heard not only from family members who have loved ones, mothers and fathers in long-term care, but also because many frontline workers are calling it a crisis. Overnight, and the call for help is faint. An 84-year-old grandmother is struggling to breathe. Staff in this long-term care home are supposed to be checking, but the family's hidden camera shows no one did.
She's gone. Nobody there to help her. She died alone, struggling.
Marie Harris is her daughter.
You're left wondering if they could have saved her.
Oh, I think they could have.
We went deep undercover inside the same long-term care home where that woman died. Finding staff so burdened they have no time to take residents to the toilet.
She's been waiting to use the washroom for like an hour.
I don't have 5 minutes. I don't even have 2 minutes. Yeah. One.
And there's little time for meaningful interaction. This home, Markhaven, just outside Toronto, told us they provide the best care possible with the money they get from government. But that only stretches so far. Sometimes at night, there's just one personal support worker to care for 27 residents. We're hearing similar stories from across Canada. Miranda Ferrier represents more than 30,000 Ontario personal support workers.
9 times out of 10, you're skipping steps, whereas that might be that day you don't wash under their armpits and you don't wash their nether regions.
Frontline staff have been warning Ontario's government that more staff are needed. We asked Premier Doug Ford for an interview. He declined. So we tracked down his health minister.
We take their concerns very seriously, and what we are doing in the ministry right now is a human resource review of the what healthcare professionals we need in various healthcare settings.
A review that some say can't come soon enough.
David, let's talk about Marie's mother. Did anyone ever look into that death?
Well, we did contact the home about that, and they said that they have forwarded the concern, forwarded for review to the Ministry of Health and the Ontario government to see if there's anything more that ought to be done. Marie's certainly looking forward to the results of that review.
Thank you, David. And for more on how to fight for better care, watch the full Marketplace investigation tonight at 8 p.m. right here on CBC Television, or watch our streaming app at cbc.ca/watch. Yesterday we told you exclusive details about serial killer Elizabeth Wetlaufer and another victim of hers. Well, today that news led to even more fallout. Was that information withheld from the victims' families and the public? We'll have that for you coming up. But first, we're live at Ryerson University for the $250,000 question. An emergency meeting is on the way this hour, trying to get answers into controversial expenses at the student union. That story coming up next.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Today is the deadline for the heads of the Ryerson Student Union to answer for $250,000 racked up on the organization's credit card. Adrian Chung joins us live from the campus now. And Adrian, tell us what's happening there tonight.
Well, Dwight, this is an emergency meeting between the Ryerson University Students Union, Board of Directors, and the students themselves. And judging by the line behind me, there are a lot of students who want answers. And this follows after the Eye Opener, which is the Ryerson University student newspaper. They broke a bombshell with the allegation, essentially, that the Students Union has spent $250,000 since May 2018 rather, and much of that money allegedly was spent at LCBO, a shisha lounge, Airbnb, bars, and restaurants. Now, to be clear, that money was taken from students' fees. The person in charge of that credit card is Ram Ganesh, the president of the RSU, along with the executive board, and Ganesh's name appears several times on the credit card statements. Everyone from the board to the university to certainly the students themselves want to know what happened to this money and what will happen now. We spoke to a few students just moments before. Have a listen to what they want to hear from the RSU.
Ideally, I think he should get real legal repercussions for this. I think he should go to jail because this is embezzlement, and I think he should be barred from ever running a business ever again.
I hope they get justice for what they've done because, you know, messing with people's money, especially students, is like, I don't even have words.
Now, the RSU president, Ram Ganesh, who has a lot to answer for, he actually won't be at this meeting tonight because he says his lawyers fear for his safety, that he essentially doesn't know what will happen here in terms of security, and so he will not be at this meeting to answer questions, Dwight.
So what power does Ryerson University even have here to deal with this, Adrian?
So Ryerson University at this point, they have ordered a forensic audit of the RSU to find out their finances. As well, a VP from the RSU has resigned this week. But there are limits essentially to what they can do because Ryerson University says that the university and the Students Union are two different entities, that students voted in the executive from the RSU and that they cannot independently force a review of the RSU. So we will have to wait to see what exactly happens and what comes out of this meeting tonight, Dwight.
Yeah, a lot of angry students behind you looking for answers. Thank you, Adrian. It is a massive building with 650,000 cubic meters of space and a smokestack that's twice the height of the Statue of Liberty. The Hearn generating station is also on prime waterfront property, and the city wants to buy it.
The Hearn is a landmark building. It's a strategic asset for Toronto's waterfront, and I think it should be in the public hands.
Right now, it's owned by the film company Studios of America. They bought the site from the Ontario Power Generation in November for $16 million. Now, the deal was dubbed a possible ripoff by the NDP and criticized by the mayor because the city wasn't even consulted. Council voted to explore a possible purchase last night, but it's not even clear Studios of America wants to sell it. The film studio hasn't responded to requests for comment. The co-founder of the Tim Hortons empire has died. Ron Joyce helped launch the donut chain with the former NHL player Tim Horton.
I drink 5 a day myself.
5 coffees a day?
Yeah, I get up in the morning. I use Tim Horton coffee, of course, but I have my own machine.
You look relatively well for a man who does that.
It's supposed to be good for you.
Oh, it's good for you now.
That's what I understand.
Who said that?
The Nova Scotia native was always an avid drinker of Tim Hortons coffee. He bought a Tim Hortons store in the 1960s and eventually sold the company to U.S. fast food giant Wendy's for $600 million in 1995. Ron Joyce died at his home in Burlington at the age of 88. His family was by his side. Stay with us. We will be right back. CBC News has learned the inquiry into serial killer Elizabeth Wetlaufer's actions was aware the nurse confessed to attacking more patients in her care, but never publicized it. Lawyers who were part of the inquiry and advocates say they're shocked by this news and want to know what else was left out. Farah Morelli explains.
She's a disgraced nurse who admitted to killing 8 elderly patients in her care and attacking 6 others. CBC News has now learned not only did Elizabeth Wetlaufer confess to a 15th attack, but that the inquiry into her actions knew about it and never publicized it.
I was shocked.
It's news that's left lawyers who took part in that inquiry stunned.
It's very concerning. It's something that we, as counsel at the inquiry, certainly would have wanted to look at, ask questions about. We think it was entirely relevant.
The confession of the 15th attack was first brought to light by CBC yesterday, after we obtained police reports that showed Wetlaufer confessed to injecting a 77-year-old woman with insulin in 2014 at this London care home. It's an incident she's never been charged for. It happened the same day she attacked another resident at the facility who died. Counsel for the inquiry initially told CBC it had never seen the police report. Then, last night, it released a statement that confirms it did know about the confession 6 months before the inquiry even started, saying in part, in January, Crown Counsel contacted Commission Counsel to advise that the police were going to commence an investigation into comments Wetlaufer was alleged to have made regarding harming residents other than those for which she was charged and convicted. But the inquiry says it never knew the results of the police investigation until after the public inquiry ended.
How valuable would it have been to have had that information in an inquiry?
We wanted to look at all the pieces of the puzzle. So this is a different piece of the puzzle that we were not able to ask questions about.
Advocates for the elderly who watched the inquiry closely are now wondering what else was left out.
I think it's also quite worrying that there was information that perhaps was held back. It certainly wasn't brought forward. And for us at CARP, we're really wondering what else was held back and not brought forward.
Farah Morelli joins us live now with more on this. So far, what is the inquiry saying about why this information wasn't made public?
Well, Dwight, it's not saying anything at the moment. We reached out to them for an interview, the counsel for the inquiry, and we were told they're not giving any interviews, and that statement that you saw earlier in the story didn't really answer that question. What we do know is that lawyers, some of whom we spoke to today, are furiously meeting behind the scenes to try and figure out what to do next, especially considering that this inquiry is now over. So we can expect to hear more about this certainly on Monday.
Yeah, it's a real mystery as to why that information wouldn't be made public at a public inquiry. And I know you'll stay on top of it. Thank you, Farah. Police are hoping a new video can help find a driver who hit a pedestrian and drove off in November. A camera outside the Metro in Bowmanville caught the incident. You can see the car hit the pedestrian as she was crossing the road. The driver then got out of the car and stayed at the scene, but he drove off once the paramedics arrived. The 62-year-old woman was left seriously injured. Durham police are now looking for the driver. He is described as a man in his 60s, about 5 feet 9 inches tall, and between 150 and 160 pounds. Frustration today for many drivers pulling into their local gas station only to find that they're completely sold out. Why did so many pumps run dry? Greg Ross went out to try to get to the bottom of it.
A huge inconvenience.
It wasn't a good day to coast into the gas station on fumes, something this man found out the hard way. You're almost on empty there.
Almost done, yes.
Now you got to drive around and find a place that has gas.
Yes.
Are you going to have enough gas to find a place?
I don't know.
Driving around looking for gas can also take time.
Unfortunately, this is a rental, so I need to figure out somehow to refuel it.
You got to get this back to the rental company.
I got to give it back in an hour.
It cost this taxi driver business. He spent the first part of his shift looking for a place to fill up.
I need it because without gas I can't drive, I can't work.
It created frustration and confusion for many, but the good news is it won't last.
It's a temporary problem, which I think can best be resolved by people not panicking.
Dan McTeague from GasBuddy.com says all of the dry gas stations in the GTA are not the result of a gas shortage.
There's no shortage at refineries. There's no shortage at the terminal. The pipelines are working quite well.
McTeague says it's because of delivery delays created by the snowstorm earlier this week.
we've seen transportation trucks not be able to get product to gas stations. In the meantime, reservoirs have gone, to empty. These things normally work themselves out slowly, gradually, but surely. You're likely to see by midpoint next week, this really won't be much of an issue as vehicles are able to catch up, provided there is no more inclement weather.
So, got to wait till next week. Now, another deadline has come and gone unfulfilled for Bombardier. The company was supposed to deliver 6 Eglinton Crosstown vehicles to Metrolinx by today. In a statement, Metrolinx says they have only sent 3 and that they expect the remaining 3 to arrive over the next couple of weeks. Metrolinx added financial penalties will be applied to Bombardier, but didn't specify what those penalties are.
If you've spent time behind bars, finding a job afterwards might be a challenge. But some of the employees who work here were hired because of their past. I'm Talia Ricci. Coming up, we'll show you around Toronto's new prison-themed pop-up.
For perhaps the first time ever, a Canadian union is buying a Super Bowl ad. The ad will run during Sunday's game. In it, Unifor berates General Motors for its recent decision to close the Oshawa plant.
So when GM needed help, we gave them $300 from every single Canadian. And after that nearly $11 billion bailout, GM continues to expand in Mexico, leaving workers out in the cold. A move that's as un-Canadian as the vehicles they now want to sell us. GM, you may have forgotten our generosity, but we'll never forget your greed. If you want to sell here, build here.
The Unifor ad will only be seen in Canada. More than 100 other commercials will be shown across North America during the big game at a cost of almost $6.8 million for 30 seconds. And that doesn't even include the cost of the elaborate productions or the high-priced talent. Here are some of the highlights coming Sunday.
Michael? Yeah? Don't do that. Hello. Good to see you again.
Likewise.
Please, Cosmopolitan.
Nope. Tonight, I'll have a Stella Artois. Your Stella, please. Thank you.
And people think I'm nuts. Always there in crunch time.
There's lorries jackknifed all up this road. There's lorries jackknifed. There's vehicles everywhere.
The highway's a car park. We're not the only ones dealing with a wintry mess. Coming up, the British version of Snowmageddon that's bringing almost everything to a halt. That and our forecast after the break. There are concerns a move by the U.S. today could lead to a new arms race. Washington says it will pull out of a key nuclear weapons treaty, and it's blaming Russia.
Russia has jeopardized the United States' security interest, and we can no longer be restricted by the treaty while Russia shamelessly violates it.
The pact is called the Intermediate Range Nuclear Force, or INF Treaty. In a written statement today, Donald Trump confirmed the U.S. will suspend its compliance with the 1987 treaty starting tomorrow, and that it will withdraw altogether in 6 months. The United States says the treaty can be salvaged if Russia destroys all of its violating weapons. Russia has denied any of its missiles violate the agreement. And Canada isn't the only place getting blasted by all that winter has to offer. They're also digging out in a place that doesn't often see much snow, England. Kayla Hounsel now with Snowmageddon across the pond.
We're at the top of Primrose Hill here in London, and people have actually been coming by sledding today, even though I can see just as much grass as I can snow at this point. Certainly parts of the UK are seeing more snow, but we're talking about 5 to 15 centimeters here, and it is widely being described as Snowmageddon. In fact, there have been 20,000 tweets already here in the UK using hashtag Snow Day or hashtag Snowmageddon. One of the questions that is trending online is, how do you drive in the snow? And some people are just not even bothering, giving up, abandoning their vehicles altogether.
The only way I can describe it is like Armageddon. So I've lived in Norway for 3 months of the year for the last 9 years, and I haven't seen anything like this. There was lorries jackknifed all up this road. There's lorries jackknifed. There's vehicles everywhere.
I should mention I saw one tweet from someone living here in the UK who said, for all the people talking about how pathetic the UK is when it comes to snow, remember that colder countries like Canada are used to this kind of weather. We have snow tires, snowmobiles, snow plows, so just really making the point that people here are not used to this, and it really does have an impact. We're hearing the conditions described as treacherous. We've seen schools closed, railways delayed. We know of one airport that was closed. Heathrow is open, but some flights are canceled. And interesting, British Airways is actually offering passengers the option of postponing travel today if they're having difficulty getting to the airport. So difficult to imagine that happening in Canada. We're also hearing that in Cornwall, there was more than 100 people who took refuge in a pub, abandoning their vehicles after waiting up to 5 hours in them, deciding the snow was simply too thick to drive through. Kayla Hounsel, CBC News, London.
I love that. They took refuge in the pub.
Hey, there are worse places, right? Yeah, they've been seeing some incredible weather there. Some of the coldest temperatures for London they've seen in over 7 years. And in fact, seeing one of their coldest temperatures, which is just about where we're going for an overnight low tonight in terms of the reading. So let's just take it back home a moment and show you what our average high is for this time of year, minus 2.3. Our average low is about minus 11. Well, today's high, much closer to that low, right? And today's low, almost, pretty much minus 19 degrees. Where we sit at the moment, though, is minus 13. We've got another cold night ahead. We're still looking at the cold alert for the city, extreme cold alert for the city. However, the cold warning is off to the west of the city for now. We have to factor those winds in to get our wind chill. It feels like minus 20, and overnight we're going to see our temperature dropping down to about minus 16, feeling like minus 25. There's that warning that I mentioned, the extreme cold warning. It continues off to the west of us. We're looking at clear conditions for the overnight hours, but all of that will be changing up as we head into the weekend. Everything's changing as we head into the weekend, not just the cloud cover, but in terms of those temperatures really beginning to spike. We have to watch that, though, because with the warming trend, the melting that we're going to see and the dangers that ensue, like we were talking about earlier, falling icicles, also the damming of the ice, getting into some flooding risks and things like that. As we move through Saturday, though, a very tricky forecast. The model's not really in agreement, mostly keeping this to the north, but there is certainly the chance not only of just some flurries overnight tonight, it's what's happening tomorrow. It looks like it's going to stay out of the city for the most part or be very, very light stuff. However, I do think later in the day, Saturday into Sunday morning, we have a better chance with the temperatures coming up and some moisture moving in of seeing some freezing drizzle, maybe even a little bit of freezing rain. Certainly Light snow turning into some showers. Not much moisture to work with. I'm not talking about a huge event here, but just knowing that we could have some very slick roadways and sidewalks, but again, mostly in the overnight hours Saturday into Sunday morning. Overnight tonight, there's that -16 with the risk of flurries, feeling still like -25, but tomorrow afternoon, hard to believe, the temperature going up to -2 degrees, very close to the freezing mark. Will be very breezy, mostly in the morning hours, though. The winds could gust over 50, even to 60 kilometers an hour. The afternoon, they should start to calm down, so I put windy in here. Saturday night into Sunday, the risk of that mix as the temperature is going to be at -4. Sunday, it comes up to 5 degrees. Here we go into some of this melting. Still above freezing Sunday night into Monday, and Monday with some showers, 7 degrees for the high temperature. After that, we'll start to cool right back down again, Dwight.
At least we'll get rid of a little bit of that snow when it melts. Thank you for that,
It won't
Colette.
be a bad thing, that part of it anyway, right?
No. Thanks, Colette. A new pop-up shop in Yorkville is serving sandwiches, sides, dishes, and second chances. Club Fed is a prison-themed restaurant that also employs former convicts. The proceeds go to local charities that help incarcerated men reintegrate into the community. Talia Ricci speaks to the line cook who spent nearly 30 years in prison.
I've been told I look a little scary sometimes. I'll be sitting on the subway, there'll be 2 chairs beside me, and no one sits beside me. And I know it's because of my appearance. As far as who I am as a person, totally different. Just generous helping of ratatouille.
How did this opportunity come to you?
To me, I was released recently in December from parole violation. The employment counselor from the halfway house, was in contact with him. He said, I have an opportunity for you. I think you'd be a great fit. When you walk in, you get a look at the prisoner's phone setup. You walk through, you see mug shots and stuff like that. You see some hard-edged tables, and at the end of the restaurant, there's like a mock-up cell.
But the food itself, not actually a replica of prison.
Not even close.
A part of Club Fed is definitely what the guys are doing in the kitchen. You know, they're making all these great sandwiches, soups, and the proceeds go to great charities. You know, when you come out of jail, you're labeled. You know, and it's definitely tough to come back in into a society that not really accepts you because obviously you're an ex-con.
If you could tell someone who is an employer who sees that box checked that they have a criminal record,
right,
what would you say to them?
Most guys getting out of prison will work. They're going to be loyal. They're going to be hardworking because they want to succeed. We've already failed because we were in prison. We were now released, and we'll try and we want to work. I mean, most guys will do a good job. I think a lot of employers would be surprised if they gave a chance to some guys. I'm not just sitting in a halfway house and what am I going to do with the day? I know I'm getting up. I have a purpose. I'm going to work. I'm having a good time at work. I know at the end of the day I'm providing for myself and my family. I'm just happy in life. Things are going very well, and I can see a bright future.
The bat flip ball could be yours. An online auction for the baseball that Jose Bautista knocked out of Rogers Center back in 2015 ends tonight. How much you'll need to bid in order to win it? Coming up after the break.
after my parents died. And I didn't really think I was gonna be able to come back to Tijuana. But you always made me feel like family. You are my family.
A new Hollywood thriller brings the tensions at the U.S.-Mexico border to the big screen. Miss Bala is a remake of a 2011 Mexican film. It stars Gina Rodriguez as an American woman who gets caught in the middle of the drug war. Eli's here with us now, so let's talk about what's behind this remake. What's the background?
For me, it started in 2012 with the original Spanish-language movie from Mexico called Miss Bala. It was, I still remember it because it was harrowing. It was about a young woman named Laura, 23 years old, and there she is, wants to be a beauty queen, wants to be in a pageant, wants to say the speech, get the crown, make some money, maybe escape her dreary little life. Now, this movie, not a lot of music, not a lot of explanation, because it was just about her, that face, that predicament. Once you understand what's happening, you don't need anything because you are right there. You're trapped with her in that situation. So this movie finds its way to the director of Twilight, Catherine Hardwicke, and Gina Rodriguez from Jane the Virgin and all the rest. And so let's jump ahead to the new version, which is about a woman named Gloria, who is from America. She's a makeup artist going back to Tijuana to help her friend Suzu get into a beauty contest. So they go out for a good time at the club, having fun, but then there's an attack. She gets separated from her friend, and she's trying so hard to find Suzu that actually she attracts the attention of the cartel, and eventually she meets Lino, younger and, you know, somewhat alluring leader of this group. Let's take a look.
What's your deal?
I grew up in the States. I lived here for a few years. My father is American, and he owned a factory of maquiladora here.
And where's the maquiladora?
It's gone.
And your father?
Gone, too.
I can help you find your friend. But you have to do something for me first.
It's not like she can say no. So she is now trapped. You've got that guy on one side, the DEA working her on the other side. So the situation begins.
You know the big question here, how does this version compare with the original?
So let me say, I've had a chance to talk to Gina Rodriguez at TIFF, and she is one of my favorite stars. Like, she is Tom Hanks level of nice. So I went into the new Miss Bala rooting for her, but I'm gonna be that guy. The original was better, and I think what's so interesting is everything they did to make the new Miss Bala more commercially viable is what robs it that was making it so interesting in the first place. And a lot of it, Dwight, comes down to it doesn't trust us. It doesn't trust the audience. So again and again, they are spelling out all the details, and instead of letting us figuring it out for ourselves. I'll give you an example. In the original, there's a scene where she gets in a police car and she says, my friend's missing, I want to make a statement, I was at the shooting. Okay, fine. They're driving to the station. The police officer gets a call on his private phone. And that's a sign. Oh, that's a warning, you know. In the new version, when he gets a call on the private phone, we get the close-up of the private phone and then his face. So again, showing us everything. I'll show you another example where in the new movie, she's driving up to a stoplight, she's been told, you can't stop, and they want to really hammer home that point, so look at how they shoot it.
All right, stay with us. Put your down. Come on, keep up. On the light.
What?
Keep up, keep up. Don't slow down. On the light.
There you go. The light, the light, the light. And then she barely makes it through. In the original, it happens so quickly. You're just reacting as she's reacting. Whereas here, again and again, they're spoon-feeding you, trying to point out every little detail. So same ingredients, but not the same result.
Is it really fair, though, to compare the two, or no?
So here's the reason why I think it's fair. Catherine Hardwicke, when she talked about the first film, she said what bothered her is that Miss Bala didn't fight back enough. But that was the point. When the director, the Mexican director, made this movie, Miss Bala is a symbol of Mexico. She is the people caught in the crossfire. She is those people who don't know where to turn, who are powerless. Instead, now, in the action movie makeover, you have Gina Rodriguez getting her moment with the machine gun and the pretty dress. Great for her career. Maybe there'll be sequels. But that doesn't really help all the Mexicans who aren't being rescued by Rodriguez.
There's a bigger picture with this story.
Exactly. Now a missed opportunity. So 2.5 stars out of 5.
Thanks, Eli.
You're welcome.
Time is running out. If you want a piece of Canadian sports history, the online auction for Jose Bautista's bat flip ball ends tonight. It's been up for sale since early last month with a starting bid of $3,500. There's been 12 bids on it so far, and it now sits at $16,081 US. That bid just this afternoon, and no one has upped it since. Open bidding closes at 10 tonight. Anyone who has bid on the ball before then will have 30 minutes to rebid. A group who owns the ball, they say they want to stay north of the border and that they will donate a portion of the proceeds to Roberto Alomar's foundation that helps young Canadian baseball players. Good luck. Stay with us. We will be right back. Okay, we're turning up the cute factor. The Toronto Zoo is getting into the Super Bowl spirit. That's Kindia, the 12-year-old pygmy hippo, making her prediction for who will win this Sunday. And forget about Tom Brady. It looks like the Los Angeles Rams will be the winners, according to the hippo. The prediction was decided by the first leaf she took a bite out of. That looks like a banana leaf, too. You can see there baby Penelope, who was born in August, follows right behind her. And baby Penelope is very cute. Very cute. So, your prediction?
There's no animal they won't take and use
to try to predict this, yes.
Seals and puppies
you
and
got it.
hippos. Got to be one of my favorites.
So pick one, man.
Yeah.
Are we done? No sixth championship for Brady? Come on.
Okay.
Yeah.
They beat my Chiefs, so I've got to go for the Rams.
I'm with you, too, because I was voting for the Chiefs, so we're together on this. We'll talk about it on Monday. Okay, so warm-up on Sunday.
Yes.
But we have to get to that point first.
We have to get there. So it's a gradual warm-up as we go through the day tomorrow, and then we'll really notice it into Sunday. The concern will be some of the melting that we're going to see and the risks of getting some flooding and falling icicles like we were talking about earlier. But just having a look, we still have one more very chilly night. So minus 16, feeling like minus 25, chance of seeing some flurries. Clouds will be on the increase, minus 2 tomorrow afternoon. Now, it will be later in the day into Sunday, like overnight, where we could get into a bit of freezing drizzle, some patchy freezing rain in there. So that'll be something to watch for, too, over the weekend. But everyone's going to notice the warm-up, especially after what we've been through.
And on Super Bowl Sunday, it's going to be good. All you Patriot fans, don't be mad at us. Our team's out already. That's it for us for tonight. Have a great weekend, everybody. Mike Wise has you covered at late night.